And of course, on the other side, and I'm absolutely convinced looking at the technology and studying the technology, that Russia has not only the capacity to detect a launch, but has the political will. Russia has lost 20 million people every war they do recently, and they won. They can lose 100 million. And they will not accept, they will not just die, that's it. They will retaliate, and they will retaliate with all of their 6,000 nuclear warheads. And yes, they will retaliate against all the bases and the control centers and the military of the United States and NATO. And yes, a lot of them are in Europe, and a lot of them are in the Middle East and around the world. The United States has bases in, I think, 180 countries around the world. This is a lot of targets, but that's much less than the 6,000 warheads that Russia has. Russia has also the ability, a very strong ability of second strike, which means that even if the unlikely scenarios that all of its nuclear forces would be wiped out, they still have bombers and missiles, which is impossible. Or not all missiles can be destroyed on the ground. Some of them are mobile and so on. But there's then submarine-launched missiles, which are extremely powerful. And each missile has multiple warheads. And you don't need 6,000 warheads to destroy North America. You need probably 2 or 3 that you detonate in the atmosphere, in the stratosphere, in fact, that create electromagnetic pulses. This is something very well mastered today, that will completely fry every computer and every electric line of the country, unless they are extremely protected. But you and I don't have these kind of protections for most of our items and the cars, the electric system. And if that falls down, that's it. The calculation, the scenarios that even the American military do, they estimate that if electricity falls down because of EMP attack in the United States, they have 90% death in the next 6 months because the economy is dead, there's no food, there's no water, nothing functions. 90% of Americans die. So they know that this is a madness. But this does not preclude that the people who rule it don't care. In fact, I'll give you some examples. In the 1950s, when there was this big scare of nuclear war, the United States, and I studied that last year, have developed a very strong mean to educate the people on what to do in case of nuclear attack. And this is very interesting because this is very valid today. What to do in case of a nuclear explosion, what you can do, and so on and so on. They also developed plans for shelters, and they would incite people, especially near the cities, to have shelters next to their house. Something that here in Switzerland, for those of you who are Swiss, you know how much we still have them. We have something like 7,000 big shelters in Switzerland, and every house has a shelter. So we have, we have 700,000 shelters in Switzerland. And so we had this plan for every single person in Switzerland to have a shelter with food and water, and we still have them. Some of us don't have food and water. We have the wine cellar for some. There's been transformations, but certainly in the 50s and 60s there was concern to tell the people how to be safe in case of war. From 2001, from September 11, 2001, in America, there was a big concern, at least officially, but they put a lot of money on that, to say, what if there is a terrorist attack with a nuclear weapon? Okay, that was their, I think, not likely scenario, unless they made it happen on themselves, of course, as I said before. But what is interesting is that from 2001, they spent even more money, but not to educate the people, not to build shelters, no, to save the government and the important elements of society, whatever that means, and I believe it's the owners, in case of nuclear war. So they have built big shelters with lots of food, lots of equipment to withstand a long time in case of nuclear war. But this time, they made zero investment for the people. So my suspicion, and it's more than a suspicion, it's a certainty, they don't care anymore about saving their own people. So they would be, I think, for them it's possible to go to war and have most of their people die because they don't care. Russia, on the other hand, since 2005, has been building big-time nuclear shelters for the population. In Moscow alone, they added, in 2010, they started to build 5,000 additional big shelters for the people. And they obviously don't do this because they like to spend money. It's because they think that it's a possibility that we are back again into the threat of nuclear war. Now, the problem for all of us is that, first of all, from the movies that we have seen when we were kids and that are still coming out, we imagine nuclear war as this thing that destroys everything, that people who come out, they are mutated, and there are all those sorts of crazy things which are not substantiated by science. In fact, even Einstein, in the early 50s, wrote that he was saying that nuclear war is not the end of the world. It's only going to kill 2/3 of the people. I think he was a bit optimistic. I think it will kill more than 2/3 of the people if there is a full nuclear war in the world. But it is true that it's not the end of the world. There are going to be a lot of areas which are not destroyed by the blast. In fact, if you live in the countryside, there is no reason that you are a target or near a target unless you are near a base, a military base. In fact, the weapons of today, they are extremely precise, and therefore the yield is much smaller than it used to be. This is also some advances in technology. They used to have weapons that had big, especially in the 50s and 60s, very, very powerful weapons because they wanted to destroy a city, or to be sure that hitting roughly near a target, it would still destroy the target. Today with the precision, GPS, and the precision is immediate on the target. So they actually did weapons which have much less yield and therefore less destruction, but because they're more precise, they destroy immediately the point. And of course, also the big change is that cities are not anymore the target, because why bother destroy a city when, again, electromagnetic pulses from a blast in the atmosphere can destroy electricity, and therefore all the supply systems of the city stop, and therefore no food comes in the city anymore, no water functions, and then people starve. So why destroy the city per se? So the tactics of usage have evolved a little bit. So we have to take a bit out from our mind the myth of the movies of that. It's at the same time it's still terrifying, but at the same time we can do something ourselves to work on it and to first of all be away from the potential target. So don't live near a military base. Don't live. I'm afraid I have to agree with you. Don't live in most of European countries and certainly NATO countries, which are going to be involved whether they like it or not in this war. Because I'm sorry, but if Russia gets attacked, they're not going to say, oh, well, we like France, they're nice people, but they've been bombing us. But we know it's not the French people. No, they will retaliate. They will destroy the bases in France. They will blast a few nuclear plants, and France will be destroyed. And UK will be even more destroyed because there's so many American bases in the UK and Germany. So it is very difficult. So I studied that because, of course, I'm living in Switzerland and I'm not going away. I know I'm far away from any blast, but certainly radiation, fallout is a concern. So clearly, I started to work out, and this is very pragmatic, is how do you work out? So it happens that I've been traveling to Chernobyl in Ukraine. I visited the nuclear plant, well, not too near, but about 50 meters. So near enough. And certainly around and to see the effects of what happens. It is not a nuclear explosion, well, it's not a bomb, but certainly a nuclear plant that explodes like Fukushima, or in that case, Chernobyl, is a very interesting place where you can learn and interview a lot. So in fact, for this book, I've interviewed a lot of experts in nuclear warfare, in the management of the power plants in Switzerland, but also in France. In France, they didn't want to answer officially, but I did find the people who would answer without putting their names. And so to learn, of course, the risks and assess them, but also to learn what we can do to prepare ourselves. And clearly, this preparation, there is really two things that are important. The first of all is information.